Okay, we are live. Welcome to Real Guitar Live. I'm Thomas Michaud, and I'm here to answer all your guitar questions. Well, the absolute best I can. Let me start with the pre-submitted questions, and then I'll go on to ask questions in the chat. Anytime, add something to the chat, and I'll look over from time to time to make sure everything's working right and to see if there's some questions. So let me start with the first submitted question. Gregory says, I'm 76 years old. Wish 26, 76 years old, started playing 2 years ago. I play an hour a day, and I've tried every trick in the book to get the F bar chord to work. No success holding down that B string. Any suggestions? So, first of all, Gregory, 76, 26, this is probably the biggest issue I've heard since I've been teaching guitar for 40-something years now. You are definitely not alone, and it's not just about age. Let me give you some tips, but I'm probably going to give you a little more than you asked for. So, first of all, when you're playing an F bar chord, the F bar chord, by the way, is probably one of the most difficult bar chords because it's down here near the nut, and that's where the most tension is when you're pressing down the bar. It's easier to play bar chords up in here because there's less tension, not so close to the nut. When you press down this chord, there's a crease right there in your finger, right about where the B string is. So that's the most natural place to not quite get the pressure that you're looking for. You could bypass the F bar chord in general, and I'd suggest you try this once in a while as an alternative, not as a solution. Play your bar chord as a partial bar. Just press the first two strings with your index finger, and then make the rest of the fingers your second and third finger here. And that gives you an option not only to play the F bar chord, but a little different sound. And I use both depending on what I'm playing. That said, one of the biggest issues that I found with the F bar chord, and I'm going to give you some clear tips. You've probably heard a lot of these tips because you've said you've tried a lot of the tricks. But let me start with something that I've found to be more important. I've been teaching over 40 years now, and I own a music school, and I, for years, trained instructors to teach guitar. I don't anymore. Now I just do the online thing. And I still own the music school, but my teachers know what to do. What I found with students for the most part is even if they've been playing for years, they underestimate the power of doing something a little at a time, over and over and over to get it right. And it's particularly noticeable with bar chords. People underestimate going from open chords to bar chords, what it actually takes to make bar chords. It's more different than they realize from open chords. All that to say, I'd strongly recommend that you adopt a practice every day for probably a few months, actually. A bar chord exercise to help strengthen your index finger, but also to learn how to press it in such a way that you get all the strings to sound. Here's the exercise I recommend. You're going to press on that first fret, and that's the hardest, by the way, with your bar, finger, index, and then just press the low E string, and then release. So you hear when I release, it deadened out. I'm releasing the pressure in my index finger. Now go on to the next string, the A string, press down, and then release. So what I'm doing is I'm pumping. Pump, D string, next string G, B, and so on. And then go backwards. Then go up a fret and do the same thing. Do that whole thing as far as you can get in just a couple of minutes. That's your exercise for the day. Stop. If you can go up and back, that's great. But listen carefully. Listen for the sound. Get a good clear ring, including that B string, right? So you're just focusing on that one string. Do that a little bit every day, and you are going to, little by little, make micro adjustments in your finger. Here's some things to watch for. Try rolling your finger back. Again, you've probably heard these tips, but I'll reiterate them. Roll the finger back just slightly this way, not on its side, just slightly. It's going to get a little more strength in the finger, you want to try moving your finger up and down this way a little bit. It's not one way works. Sometimes a little this way and a little this way. What you're trying to do is adjust it so one part of this finger hits that B string a little better. And sometimes it's just a micro adjustment. So do that while you're doing this exercise. Try moving it around. Oh, that doesn't sound. Let me try rolling the finger back a little. Ah, that's better. Or move up and down a little bit. There we go. Those are things that little by little will kind of train your finger so you don't even have to think about it after a while. Then when you go to make the full bar chord, this finger will get more and more strong and know what to do, and the rest of the fingers already know where to go. So you've got a great head start that you've been actually playing the form of the bar chord. So one more thing that you might want to look at, and it's worth considering. Take your your capo, put it on the 5th fret of your guitar, and then play your F chord up here. It's going to actually be an A, but just call it F chord form. If the B string rings fine there, it indicates you probably need some adjusting on your guitar. This is the hardest place to play the F form of the bar chord. And if your guitar is not adjusted properly, it makes it a lot harder. Even just small adjustments can make it a lot harder. That's worth checking out. 5th fret, make the F bar chord. If this rings, that means you probably need a little adjustment on the strings to make it easier. And that might just solve the problem. Still recommend that bar chord exercise, by the way. You'll see, even if you do it for a week or two, how it not only strengthens your finger, but it causes your finger to know just how to hit the strings without having to think about it after a while. It just becomes a habit. And it'll make the whole bar chord experience easier in the long run. But it takes time. It's not a couple days and it's done. It's one of those micro habit things. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question. If anybody thinks any more questions about bar chord, I'd love to indicate in here. And by the way, I just want to acknowledge that actually the B string sounding when you're strumming chords, it's not a big issue. You're not going to hear it that much. It is a bigger issue when you're doing finger picking, and if you hit that one string and it deadens out, it's very obvious. But when you're strumming, the B string's not going to make a huge difference. But you'll find that bar chord exercise makes the whole experience of playing bar chords easier, which makes it more fun. Okay, next question. I travel fairly often. This is from Carl. He says, I travel fairly often, and when I get, and I can't always bring my guitar. Matter of fact, a lot of times I can't. Sometimes a week turns into, when I get back, I feel like I'm out of the routine. And sometimes a week of trying to get back into it a week of traveling turns into several weeks of disruption in my guitar practice. What can I do? If I can't take my guitar, what can I do to get back to my practice more smoothly when I return? So there's kind of two questions Carl's asking. What can I do about, practicing when I'm traveling, if it's hard to bring my guitar? And second of all, what can I do to get back into the practice routine, to get back up and running more easily, more smoothly? First of all, there are things you can do when you're traveling that don't involve the guitar. A lot of playing guitar really is up here as opposed to in your fingers. That's not what you see, but really what's going on is up here. And you can do a variety of things to keep your practice moving forward, even though you're not actually playing the guitar. I really look at those travel opportunities as chances to listen to music, and particularly music I wouldn't normally listen to. I don't have time during my normal workday between guitar practicing and all my other things to just sit down and listen to music. When I'm traveling, I do. And often I come back inspired by some new music that I've heard. Practice reading, looking at some sheet music or charts, and just try to hear the music in your head. This is a great experience. And, if you can, when you get back, try playing some of the things that you tried to just listen to in your head, it's amazing how this kind of mental rehearsal actually does help. Listen to songs for things like chord changes. Listen for melody and try to visualize what they're doing in the music. Picture chord shapes, and when you hear a guitar player playing something, try to picture in your mind what the chord he's playing. When you come back, to help make things get smoother, try to have a plan ahead of time of what you're going to do. That's the biggest thing that stops me is I get back and I sit there and go, God, where do I start? Try to have a plan ahead of time. And that could be as simple as make a little index card and write down, when I get back, first thing I'm going to practice is this, this, and this. And try to make it something that you're going to review that's fairly easy, not start with the hardest thing that you were working on and just expect to get back into it right where you left off. Start with something as consider kind of warming up and getting back into it. And part of that's attitude. Allow yourself to ease back into your regular routine. Otherwise, your mind is kind of fighting it, and that will drain your energy. When you get back, try to do just one small thing to get a win first, and that'll help with that mental, I call it frustration, but it's like a friction, a mental friction to get back into playing guitar. Otherwise, I've done this more than once. I'll get back and try to play one of the hardest things I stopped playing before I went away, and it doesn't go well, and I get frustrated. I don't even want to play anymore. And even if I keep trying to practice, there's a part of me that's, kind of upset and doesn't allow me to really get into it. Try to stop your practice when you get back. This is another thing that I've found. Practice something that feels good, and try not to go too long at first. Practice just enough well, you're still feeling good about it. Don't wait until all the problems start showing up. They'll come, right? Give yourself a chance to kind of get going again. Okay, let me just mention a little bit about traveling. I have found that I can often bring a guitar where I used to think I couldn't. One of the ways I do that is I use a Yamaha silent guitar, and it packs down fairly small. And it sounds good, by the way. You put headphones in so you kind of hear it through an amplifier. That about half the places I used to not be able to bring a guitar, I can bring that and still practice. One of my coworkers, my teammates, just told me yesterday he went away for, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, and he went to a music store to rent a guitar. He actually couldn't rent a guitar at the local music stores, but he found a beater that he bought for pretty inexpensive and ended up practicing the whole 3 weeks he was on vacation. And it happened to be he was visiting his family, so he left the guitar there, so whenever he goes back, he has a guitar. That's a possibility, renting a guitar when you go somewhere, or even buying a beater if you're going to stay for a while. I've traveled also with little small guitars, these little like 3/4 guitars. I prefer my silent guitar. It's sounds better and is more, the neck is more like the real guitar. That said, there are times I know you can't bring it. Even my silent guitar, which packs pretty light, they almost didn't want to let me come back from London with that. They decided it wasn't going to fit for some reason. I don't know. I ended up getting it on anyway. I had to talk to management, but I wasn't going to leave it in London, that's for sure. I hope that helps. I hope you find a way to smooth that over. Bottom line is, consider your travel time away just different. It's not that you're losing something. You're having a time to kind of consolidate to some degree what you've been working on. And there is a certain amount of rest that actually turns into more learning later on. And you can also come at it different ways, listening, trying things that you can do. I had a friend that used to take a little pretend fretboard with him and practice visually. He'd just press on his fretboard and practice his note reading. That was how he practices actual sight reading on the guitar. That might fit in there somewhere. So give yourself a break. Just think of it as something different experience. And at the same time, it's part of life. We all travel and have commitments, and that's just part of the gig. Next question. Oh, they said I should move my mic a little bit. Thank you. Better? Yeah, good. I can see a little screen over here. I just wasn't looking. John says, you must have small hands because my index finger does not make it completely across the fretboard. 5 strings tops. So I think what John means is that he must have small hands. I must have small hands. Most people on a classical guitar, the neck is wider. So yeah, but you can see my hands are probably on the medium. They're not small, but they're not huge. I can easily make it across the fretboard. But there are narrow guitar necks too. And if you can't make it across the fretboard, I'd say you probably would warrant a smaller neck guitar. It could be a steel string, or they make even nylon strings with smaller necks. Okay, what's the next submitted question? I've learned all 5 positions on the minor pentatonic scale, starting on the low E on frets 1, 4, 6, 8, and 11. This is Michael asking. Are these interchangeable on the fretboard? So he's saying he learned the minor and the minor position starting on the first fret, 4, 6, 8, and 11. 12, 11. You're talking about the F minor pentatonic scale. Right. And he's talking about different positions. You can play that scale here, or here, or here. No, I'm a little lost. Quite frankly, I never use the F minor pentatonic scale. Normally, I have students, and mostly I play A minor pentatonic or E minor pentatonic. That's just most blues rock songs are in those keys. I don't remember ever having run across one in F, but the concept's the same. Yes and no is the answer. Yes, if you play the F minor pentatonic scale in this position and you move to this position, it's the same notes. They're just obviously organized a little bit differently, and so on, all the way up the fretboard. Same exact 5 notes. The idea is these positions kind of fit together so that you can find the notes all the way across the fretboard. It's just a way of organizing the notes in the pentatonic scale. Pentatonic means 5. There's only 5 notes in that scale. Same notes. If you play the different positions up, you're going to be playing basically the same notes over a solo. So yeah, it works. That said, you cannot take this position and move it and stay in the same key. You'll be in a different key. If I move it from F up 2 frets, I'll be in the key of G, G minor pentatonic. 2 more, I'll be in the key of A. And so on. Now, that said, I want to mention something that is maybe a little beyond what you're asking, but I think it's important at this stage in your development to know. First of all, whether it's the F minor pentatonic scale or the A, which if you're just starting out, I'd really recommend you just move that whole thing to A, starting on A. And start with this one position. You see, I see a lot of people over the years, and again, I've been teaching a long time. I've seen students learn all 5 positions, and if they practice enough, yeah, they can play the notes all up and down. They can basically find the notes for the pentatonic scale all up and down the neck. But their playing doesn't sound musical. It sounds like they're playing scales. Now, I was in that boat. Really. I mean, I practiced for years the pentatonic scale, and I remember one time this great trumpet player came. He was the boyfriend of my piano player in the band, and he came to see us, and he was way above us in terms of his ability as well as his fame, so to speak. He was a well-known trumpet player. And he listened to me play, and he says, "You're playing." I asked him, "How do you like?" And he said, "Your playing sounds interesting, but it sounds like you're playing scales." And he was right. I learned the scales up and down, and I was finding notes that fit with the song, but it didn't sound musical. I learned since then, and this is what I impart to all my students: start with one position and make it your own. Play it to where you can really make music out of it. Just start with a few notes. Try sliding into the notes, bending, play different orders of notes, and listen to what you're playing. Play along with backing tracks and make music out of it. Don't just play the notes. That's not what music is about. And then when you feel like you've exhausted that one position and you're ready to stretch a little bit, add one more position, or we used to call boxes. Add one more box, maybe, doesn't matter, down or up. See, in A, one thing about A minor is you can go down or up. So the next position would be here. Oh. That's just the next position. Then add that and do the same thing. Try making music in that position. Try connecting it. Find where you can slide from a note from this position to this position and make it sound musical. Make your own little phrases and try to remember the ones that you like and use them here and there. Playing along with backing track. Keep it simple at first. Maybe just, a simple 12-bar blues is a good way to start, but sometimes people prefer just two chords. So, like in the key of A, maybe an A minor and an E7 chord. You will sound much more like a guitar player than just somebody who can technically play the notes up and down the fretboard that way. And you'll make music. I hope that helps. And it was hard for me to hear when I was coming up, when I was first starting. I didn't immediately go home and start doing this. So I get it if maybe, that's not maybe welcome advice right now, but hold it as a possibility, and hopefully it'll make more sense to you at some point. Get the hat back on. Okay, next question. Would it be helpful to finger open chords the way we finger triads in the baby chord challenge? She's talking about a 5-day challenge that's in my Real Guitar Success membership. So she's saying she wants to make baby chords without the index finger so she can move the chord up and down the fret like a bar chord, basically. So this Diane is asking this. So just to be clear, she didn't say this, but I think she's talking about in that baby chord challenge, one of the lessons shows these 3-note chords like this. Triads on the upper 3 strings of the guitar, the top 3 strings of the guitar. And I showed how they relate to the cage system. So that's probably where this, playing like a C chord, the cage system is the C chord form. You can play it, a C chord up here, you make a bar, and you play the C chord. Now it's a C chord form, but you're playing a D chord, C, D, and so on. Now it's an E chord, and so on. The short answer is, as an exercise, this could be helpful, Diane, to kind of see the chord forms and the notes up and down the neck. As you get more advanced, it can also help you play melodies, seeing how the chord forms relate to the melody notes for that particular key that you're working in. But as far as being able to play chords up and down the neck, that's not the best way to practice. First of all, a lot of those forms, when you try to make them with a bar, are not very convenient. Here's a very obvious one. The G chord. Go up to 2 frets, right? I can make G chord here, but I got to make a bar right here. I can do it, but it's not something I'm going to use really in the song. There's much easier ways to make that A chord. That's one of them. I'm going to use the normal bar chord forms, A and the A chord bar chord form most often, and not form bar chords out of these different chord forms in the cage system. A D is another one that's hard. This is a D chord. Everybody see? Let me see. I'll get a little closer. What about that? How about that? D chord. So I want to play E. I'd have to make a bar like this. Yeah, I can do it. You know, I'm playing slow. In a song fast, that's not really comfortable. Sometimes I'll make a chord like this. Oh, sorry. There it is. Or I even move it around to play like this. This is part of the D chord. But very seldom, quite frankly. Most of the time, I just don't use that form. Okay, let me come back. So it's exercise, yes. More of a theory kind of exercise, but to try and actually play like that, probably not useful. Jalma says, when I'm finger picking and I lift my fingers to release a chord, some of the strings catch on my fingers and make noise. How can I avoid that sound? I think what you're talking about is what I call this kind of plink sound when your fingers are kind of dragging across a string when you go to change from one chord to another. I don't know if I could replicate that sound on demand, so to speak. But two things that create that sound is pressing too hard and not lightening up enough before you change to the next chord. So almost all guitar players press too hard, and I have to watch myself from time to time. We use more energy than we need to form even a single notes, never mind chords. One good way to practice this is to make your chord and then just lighten up your fingers and see where it stops sounding, and then press again and see how hard you actually have to press to make the chord sound. You'll probably find that it's much lighter than you think. And that will help you figure out, just do 2 minutes a day for a period of time. It'll help you figure out really where that point is where you need to press. When you're changing chords, try only to press as hard on the chord as you need to make the sound, and then lighten up your finger when you're going to change chords and try to press straight off as opposed to the side. So I'm deliberately pressing up and down, not that far. I was exaggerating. It's really just a little bit up and down. What I don't want to do is just slide over like that. That's going to make a sound. Watch that your fingers aren't flattening out when you're playing. The more you get them on the fingertips, the easier that will be. And then, of course, check for calluses or ridges on your fingers. And that's happened to me. Kind of a funny story. I broke a nail and I needed on my right hand the nail to play. I'm playing some flamenco piece where I need that nail. So I put a fake nail on and I used crazy glue. And the crazy glue got on my left hand a little bit, just a little bit. But that was causing my finger to catch. Not from the stickiness, it was dry. But it got hard and made a little indent in my finger when I pressed down on the string. So if you have calluses, it'll do the same thing. And you know, it helps again if you can get more on the tip of your finger than on the pad. And wipe down your fingers. Wipe down your strings too every time you play. Now, John, I want to also mention that this all will reduce that sound, but there's really no completely getting rid of it, nor do you want to. That's the sound of guitar playing to some degree. So you want to reduce it so it's not annoying, but don't stress over trying to make it go away completely. That's just the sound of guitar. You know, all instruments have a certain, like, you know, blowing on a flute, there's a breathy part. If it's too much, the note doesn't sound right. But, you know, that's part of flute playing. That's what makes it sound like a flute. The guitar, part of it is a little squeaking, right? That sound when you're going up and down and moving from one fret to another, one string to another, there's a little bit of a sound. You don't want to sound like a machine. Right? That's what AI or a synthesizer sounds like. That's how you can tell it's not a real guitar. It doesn't quite have those little nuances that make a guitar sound like a guitar. When I strum with just my fingers, it seems easier and sounds better than with a pick. Okay. With a pick, I feel clumsy and harsh. I can't seem to get a smooth, feathery strum. Any help? John's asking this. I want to acknowledge, first of all, that strumming with your fingers is a real thing. And this is a nylon string, more appropriate for nylon string than steel string, but still a lot of people do it on steel string. I love Mark Knopfler. He only plays with his fingers. He doesn't use a pick. That's just one of many, rock players that play with their fingers. That said, if you really want to play with a pick, there is a sound you can get with a pick that you can't quite get with your fingers. It's that really smooth strumming that comes from this little hard surface at the end of the pick. It's just a crisp swish sound. And I'll give you some tips to help you with that. And it's going to take time. I'm going to be upfront with you. There is not a quick fix. Do this and it's all solved. You got to develop a habit. And the habit comes from doing it over and over, a little at a time. I would say probably just a couple minutes a day, really. This is not, a little is not half an hour. But you're going to have to do it over a period of time. First of all, the way you hold your pick. Put it on your finger, pointing out from your finger, thumb over, and then aim your hand into your strings. It's not the only way to hold a pick, by the way. I do this differently if I'm playing melody, but this is a strumming position. Now what I'm doing is letting my pick just slightly wobble, slightly. If it's too much, it's going to fly out. We've all had that experience. Just slightly. So you got to find that place, and that's where the habit comes in. You got to find that place where it stays in your hand, but there's a little flexibility there. Now, as you strum, you're strumming like this. And your hand is up as you go down, slightly. So you don't want to do this. That's the harsh sound. It's like this. And then it angles the other way. So I'm doing this on the guitar. I'm like painting a little brush on the strings. You can practice this way. Just mute your strings and listen to the sound. Try to get a nice swish brush sound. You don't want this. That's harsh. And that's going to turn it's worse when you play a chord. Then try it with a chord and see how it sounds. But practice this way for a while. Go slow and then try to pick it up. You might even want to try putting a metronome after a while and see how fast you can get and still get that swish sound. Little at a time. Just keep at it. It gets to be a habit. You wouldn't even think about it after a while. I remember, this is one of the few memories I have of starting on guitar, but I remember it being about a year in. I had the hardest time getting a good, clean drum sound and changing chords on time, mostly. But I remember sitting around the campfire, and I was playing songs, and my friends were singing. And all of a sudden, I looked down, and I said, it was just going without me even thinking about it. It was a nice, smooth strum, and I was changing chords. It just kicked in, and that's probably how it'll work. It won't be like a little better every day. It'll be, a little better, it's worse, a little better, Lord. Then all of a sudden, one day, it's working. Keep at it. By the way, if you want to use your fingers, I'm going to show you one more technique. You can strum like this, right? Some people do that, and some people just use a thumb. But a nice way to strum with your fingers is to use a similar motion that I do with a pick, but I'm using the fingernail here and the thumbnail. So it looks like this. I'm going to turn, let's get closer. I can do this. Watch. I'm going to strum down with my finger, and you see I'm using my index fingernail and twisting my hand as I go down. Now the thumbnail on the way up. That makes a little crisper sound than the thumb, which is fine. That's how I play soft with thumb. But if I want a nice crisp strum, listen. Almost sounds like a pick, huh? Because my nail is hard. you might want to try that too. It's good to have both in your arsenal, but don't discount the fingers as a possible option. And the final written question I have, or pre-submit, I should say. Something I noticed with a lot of guitar lessons. This is a comment. Okay. Joseph has asked me to read this out loud. Joseph wants me to read this comment, basically. It's not a question. I guess it is a question. Something I noticed with a lot of guitar lessons on YouTube. They move at the teacher's speed. Often there's no tab, no chord diagram, no notation to follow along with. As a student, it's hard to keep up. What can I do about that? So first of all, yes, I know that's a thing. Keep in mind, Joseph, that when teachers, including myself, are on YouTube, we can't really see if the student gets it or not. And it's a bit of a dilemma because YouTube rewards speed and energy. And if you go too slow, enough people drop off and YouTube stops showing your video to people. So we're kind of fighting the system there. You want to go slow enough that it makes sense to people, but fast enough that they don't get bored, and YouTube basically drops you. That said, there are some things you can do. One is there's a little gear icon in the bottom right-hand screen of all YouTube videos, and you can slow down the video, and I do recommend that. And don't be ashamed to go ahead and rewind and watch something over several times, even at a slower tempo. Oh, let me go back to the big me there. So go ahead and slow it down and rewind where you need to. That's the nice thing about videos. Keep in mind the teacher can't actually see if that's easy for you or if that's hard. And they're probably going to err if they're playing the YouTube game, they're going to err on the side of keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. I'm sure I'm guilty of that too, and I appreciate knowing that that's an issue, and I will try to pay attention to that. I can see that putting diagrams or some notation or something would give an extra, along with what I'm saying, give an extra way of grabbing the information. So that's good to hear. Okay, that's all the questions I have for today. I'm going to look over at the chat and see what questions we have there. Okay, I'm start from the top. By the way, if you can start the question with the word question, I'll be able to see it more easily. There's comments there too, and sometimes I can't read fast enough to sort through the comments. And if I missed your question, I apologize. I really want to answer it. Just add it again at the end, and I will answer it. Okay. Any advice regarding changing chords in time other than practice, practice, practice? Yeah, more practice. No, kidding. There's two issues I've heard over the years, over 40 years of teaching, that I would say are the number one. Bar chords are one. The second is changing in time. And what I notice is most students learn a bunch of chords, but they can't change in time. And they learn way more chords that they can actually use because they can't change them in time, so it sounds like music. The first thing I would say is to back up and just start with a few chords and learn to change those in time before you start messing with more chords. And when I say a few chords, what's really helpful is to learn 3 chords in a key that you can actually use so you can try playing some songs and stuff with it. There's no absolute right or wrong way to do this. One possibility is to learn the D chord, the G chord, and a C chord. I like to play the C chord this way. A lot of people play it this way. Both are great. Just pick one for starters. So then you can play songs. Makes a nice progression to practice. But even with those, start with just 2. Learn the chord form of 2 chords. Let's say the D and the G. I like to start students with a 4-finger G. It sounds like a lot of fingers, but these 2 fingers kind of anchor there and make it easier to move. And then practice just changing with no timing And then practice, put on the metronome, go very slow, and force yourself to change on time. Start with just like, I like to start students with 4 beats, and they play 1, 2, 3, and then skip a beat, and it gives them time to change so that they land on the right beat. Then 1, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. See, I got space there to land on the 1 again. Then when that gets fairly easy, start cutting it down. Just 2 strums each. And then trying to get to the next chord before the beat. And so on. Then speed up your metronome little by little and make it go faster. Once you feel like you're okay with 2 chords, you don't want to get perfect, of course. Then add that 3rd chord. Then when you can do those 3 chords, go ahead and start developing another key. You know, you might want to add the A and the E. That makes a good one. The F and bar chords, I would say for later. The bar chord, the F. The key of C, by the way, uses the F bar chord, so I would save that for a little bit later. Now that said, changing in time, there's a couple of tips. When you're changing chords, first of all, go slower than you think you need to go. That's another thing I know some students are always, they show me what they can do, and they're always going faster than they can actually keep up. Go slower than you think you need to go. And when you go to change chords, think the change ahead of time. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm exaggerating a little bit, okay? I'm going to go from the D to the G. I'm thinking four strums on D and 4 strums on G, right? But I'm not going to wait to start changing when I need to get to the G. I'm going to change ahead of time. Listen. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. That and, I start changing on the and. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. 3, 4, and 1. I'm exaggerating, actually. I can go even faster than that. I can just a little before the D. When you practice, you can go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Because my fingers know exactly where to go. I've been doing it for years. In the beginning, give yourself more time, and then you shorten it little by little. You never have to get it exactly. Nobody will notice if there's a gap. Listen. Did you see how big of a gap I had between the chords? Did it sound bad? No. As long as I keep this hand strumming, I don't go like this. No, you don't want to do that. Keep this hand moving. And do that slow at first and then build up speed. You know, I didn't get there overnight. I hope that helps. Those are just some ideas. Of course, there are many things you can try, and those are, I think, the most valuable. And don't underestimate working at it a little bit each day and keep coming back at it. Don't look for the one big quick fix. You might find one that all of a sudden feels like everything clicked, but it usually comes from lots of previous practice that all of a sudden just all came together. Good evening from England. That's right. It's evening, huh? And somebody mentioned that the Steinberger is a very small guitar that you can get on the plane. It's a headless guitar, they call it. Anyone dodging YouTube ads that keeps bombing in? I don't know about that. But I know you can pay to not have ads. Or I even heard there's ad blockers, but I don't know about that. If time permits, please address my submitted question about strumming with pick as opposed to fingers. Okay, I got that one. Good. When you can suddenly do something that you've been trying to learn, that's the best feeling. It sure is. You just can't depend on it. Just call it a bonus, right? Because if you depend on it, it can be really frustrating. I'm learning the solo to a California Hotel. Can you give me some tips on doing the bends on an acoustic guitar? I can't understand it. I'm sorry. Oh, bends on the acoustic guitar. So on acoustic guitar, you can do all the same bends. You just can't bend as far, and it is harder. First of all, put very light strings on your acoustic guitar. That really will help. You could even put electric guitar strings on an acoustic guitar. It doesn't sound as good. Your probably best balance of sound for ease of playing is just use extra lights on your acoustic guitar, and that will help. That'll help a lot. Also, when I've played like some electric guitar songs on my acoustic guitar, I have kind of sometimes substituted a slide for a bend, like this. Instead of, I would go like this. Because it's easier to slide on the acoustic than it is to bend the string. And of course, it's easier on the thinner strings than the thicker strings. So that's more advantageous to the thicker strings when you bend there. Okay, thank you. Yes, got it, bends. That's all the questions I have for now. I guess we'll close up. You've been great. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. And thanks for pre-submitting questions ahead of time. I'll be back next month, the second Thursday of the month. I'm happy to answer questions. If you can send them to me ahead of time, please do. Sometimes I'll even do a little research and try to give you a fuller answer. But you're always welcome to show up and submit the questions live. By the way, just so you know, I am recording this and I'll put timestamps. And on Monday, Tuesday, I'll send an email with a link to that so you can get right to your question. You don't have to be live to get your questions answered. Though, if you're here live, of course, you can ask extra questions and hear other people's questions, which can often be something you didn't think to ask, but really useful. Thank you for being with me today. I look forward to seeing you again, hopefully next time. Bye for now.